Thank you for attending and being here. I want to begin by making an exception for one of our candidates. And this person gets special privilege tonight because his wife is expecting and is scheduled for a C-section in the morning. So if Mr. Elliot Cassidy jumps up and runs out, that is why. So congratulations. That's very special. Congratulations. So I know there will be others that will be coming in. And just again, thank you for attending tonight's special meeting. Your attendance is evidence of the genuine concern for the well-being of the citizens of this great parish. The idea for tonight's forum was birthed in my wife's heart in November of last year. In fact, we first contacted the candidates on November 19th, 2021, and invited all of them, and they all gladly accepted the invitation, and for that, we are very, very grateful. Before we go much further, I would like to give you a few bits of helpful information. We do have a nursery available tonight for children 5 and under, complete with snacks, toys, and 2 excellent volunteers, Ricky and Rhonda Richard. We also have a cry room available for nursing mothers, and this will be down the hall, and to the right is the nursery, and to the left is the cry room. Also, please take a moment to ensure that your phones are silenced or put on mute or airplane mode. We will attempt to conclude this evening's event by about 8 p.m. If we stop short or go a little early, I'm sure you won't be upset about that. If it goes a little over, you can be a little upset about it if you like. So a little shameless plug here. If you're interested in seeing an open and honest discussion on relationships, marriage, parenting, and the family, then you may want to join us tomorrow evening at 6:30 for Table Talk. This isn't a sermon, but a candid conversation conducted between my family and I right here on this stage. So we're going to leave this set because this is generally what we do once a year around Thanksgiving. And Paula and I, my 2 daughters, Eden and Aaron, my 2 sons-in-law, we're up here, and we just talk about marriage and family. We've got several questions that we'll talk about. And we just try to explore different areas of relationship with a biblical basis. And after being married to Paula for 33 years, we feel like we have something that we can share, and we're very grateful for that. So that'll be here. Also, I'm also going to give a shameless plug for a book that I've just published titled Lost in the Woods. It's a... Feel all that power. It's awesome. It's a book about the lost art of intentionality. The word wood is the past tense of will. In the woods, you find lions and bears, and the reason you're barely making it is you've been lying to yourself, lost in the woods. Usually there's a but that person isn't at the drums today. We're hosting a book launch Sunday, March 13th at 10:30, and of course you are invited. One last bit, I would ask that you would hold your applause to the end of each candidate's response, giving them ample time to respond to the questions. In 1981, a gentleman by the name of W. Cleon Skousen wrote his book, The 5,000-Year Leap. Its premise provides the principal purpose for tonight's gathering. The first colony was founded at Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. When these brave men and women arrived here, their tools for agriculture had little changed over the past 5,000 years. They still used oxen, mules, and horses to pull crude plows made of forged iron strapped to wood. But something would change, and it changed because of their quest for religious freedom. Our forefathers created a special document that would ensconce the God-given, not government-granted rights of every individual. In 1787, the Constitution of the United States of America was written and ratified and radically altered the course of history. Following the American Revolution was the Industrial Age, which mechanized agriculture, as well as many other industries, providing what Skousen refers to as the 5,000-year leap. It is this Constitution that all elected officials swear an oath to uphold and to protect. It is this Constitution that has created the wealthiest and most prosperous nation in the history of the earth. And it is this Constitution that is constantly under attack as power-hungry politicians use the police state to deny the people their God-given rights. These God-fearing men created a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, based upon a biblical principle found in Isaiah. In Isaiah 33 and 22, the prophet would say, "For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king. He will save us." Judge, lawgiver, king. 3 branches of government: judicial, legislative, and executive. This method of checks and balances in our government have their roots in the eternally established Word of God. All positions are temporary. All offices are temporary. What is eternal are our souls. And our eternal souls are affected by the temporal governments of man. Principle and policy are more important than person or personality. The principles and policies of the elected person will have greater effect on the people than the person elected. Tonight, I want to thank all 3 candidates for stepping up to the plate, for placing themselves in such a vulnerable state, because elections can be very painful. I want all 3 of you to know that I, Jesus Worship Center, and I believe this community as well, will support whichever of you 3 becomes the next district attorney. It is our prayer that tonight's venue provides you with a unique opportunity to share your values and your vision for Jeff Davis Parish. Now, each of the candidates were given 8 questions to consider 2 weeks ago. They have had time to ponder their responses. Each will be given approximately 3 minutes to address the question. While moderating tonight's forum, I may insert a follow-up question. I will go by alphabetical order, with each question rotating who goes first. At the end of the questioning, each candidate will be given time for their closing remarks. Will you join me in standing? So, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, we are so grateful for your goodness and mercy. And we ask forgiveness of every sin, of every unrighteous thought, action, deed, or intention. None of us here are holy. None of us here are righteous. You are the only good, holy, and righteous one. I thank you that you have blessed us to be citizens of the freest, most prosperous nation that has ever existed. May we never take that for granted. Thank you for this democratic republic, for the men and women who step up to serve, many of them at great peril. I just plead your blood over our 3 candidates, that your perfect will be done. I speak a blessing over Jefferson Davis Parish, that you would bring unity, protection. We take authority over spirits of destruction, religion, and poverty that would seek to bring harm to the citizens of this community. May you anoint the men and women who are in office and those who support them. I plead your blood, and we pray, God, for your continued blessing over this great nation in the name of Jesus Christ. Would you clap your hands to the Lord? Thank you so much. You may be seated. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome our first candidate in alphabetical order, Mr. Elliot Cassidy. Excellent. Would you please make welcome Miss Lauren Heinen. Thank you. And finally, would you please make welcome my neighbor, Mr. Daniel Sparks. All right, so we will begin. Again, thank you for coming. I'm going to have a seat right here. So we'll begin with Mr. Elliot Cassidy. I believe all of your mics are on already.
Okay, good.
To begin, please tell us a little about yourself and why you chose a career in law.
Thank you. So, again, my name is Elliot Cassidy. I am your current district attorney. But more importantly than that, I am Kelly's husband and Barb's dad. I married Kelly Watkins from Welsh, and we've been married. She's a beautiful wife, loving wife. You just heard we're about to have another child early tomorrow morning. So it's been a day, but she's great. She's very supportive, lovely, beautiful woman. And Kelly, I love you. I don't know if you're watching at home or not, but I love you so much. And I hope that this congregation, and I know this congregation, I believe this congregation will keep you and my family in their prayers tonight. I'm Barb's dad. She just turned 2 on Sunday. And she is a firecracker. She's really into dinosaurs. She calls them sores. She really likes bracelets, and that includes rubber bands. And her favorite show, I think right now, is Bubble Guppies. So that's what we're dealing with at home. So that's me. I'm born and raised in Jennings, Louisiana. I graduated from Jennings High School. I was the valedictorian of my class. I was the who's who honoree for my class at Jennings High School. I went from there to LSU, graduated in 4 years with honors from LSU with a degree in history with a concentration in secondary education. Taught for 2 years at Rain High School after that. Coached football, coached softball, coached track and field, coached cross country. There's not enough time left for me to get into why I left education. But ultimately, I decided why it was not for me, and I'll just give you a hint. It wasn't because of the students. And so I went to law school, went to Wake Forest University for law school in North Carolina, and came back to Louisiana and started practicing law. I practiced for about 2 years in Baton Rouge before I moved to Jennings, where I practiced for about a year. Just in Jennings, then I got hired by the DA's office. And I was called to the law because I was searching for something else while I was still in education. But it was in 2016 when I was hired as a prosecutor by the Calcasieu District Attorney's Office when I finally felt that I was doing what God put me on this earth to do. I felt that I had finally answered a calling, and I was doing and serving my purpose. And I believe that we are all here. There's no higher calling than to serve others. And as a prosecutor, I was able to do that. And I am hoping, with your vote, to be able to continue to do that as the district attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lauren?
Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you, Ms. Paula, for being so persistent and just wanting to make this a really great forum. My name is Lauren Heinen. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm from Hathaway, Louisiana. My parents are Dave and Arlene Heinen here. My mom is a retired educator, administrator, and curriculum supervisor, and my dad is a third-generation farmer. So I'm a country girl. I grew up in Hathaway on the farm. My dad had us up at 4 o'clock in the morning, tending to the cattle that we showed livestock. He had us driving tractors with all the guys and shoveling rice bins. And so to get out of the manual labor, I basically played every sport there was that was offered in Hathaway and Welsh. So I have the where are you from complex because I'm from Hathaway and grew up with a Jennings address, an Elton phone number, and I graduated from Welsh. So I claim the entire parish as my own. The reason I got into the career of law, the reason I became an attorney is because at a very young age, my aunt, who is also an attorney, took me under her wing. And she'll tell you to this day, she never told me to go to law school. She knew it would be a tough road, but she took me to court with her whenever I was 6 years old, so I was very young. And at that time, she was an attorney for DCFS, so she was handling child in need of care cases and juvenile cases. And so she'd sit me in the back of the courtroom with a legal pad and a pen. I'm not sure if that's me. Okay. And I would watch her and I'd write down questions and I would let her know after court was over all of my questions, and she would answer them on a really age-appropriate level. And from watching that advocacy at a very young age, it ignited a passion in me. And I knew that I could help people who were helpless. I knew that I could be the light for those who were in darkness. I knew that I could be that beacon of light for people that were in the very worst time of their lives. And that's why I became an attorney. I wanted to serve others. I wanted to be that beacon of light. And so I'm very happy to have gone down that road and pursued my passions, and I'm very grateful to my family who always, always, always push me to succeed. So thank you. Thank you, family.
Thank you, Ms. Lauren. Mr. Daniel?
So my name's Daniel Sparks, and quick things about me. I graduated Jennings High 2001, after which I went to McNeese, got an accounting degree, graduated there 2005, realized I hated taxes, and so became a landman with my dad, working throughout the state, from Orange, Texas, to Mobile, Alabama, from Cameron Parish up to Lincoln Parish. After 3 years of doing that, I went to Southern University Law Center, graduated 2011, passed the bar, moved back to Jennings, and been an attorney pretty much ever since, past 10 years. The reason I wanted to become a lawyer is, one, growing up, my dad was a landman, so he took me to the courthouses a lot. I spent a lot of time over there. And you would see the lawyers going in and out, talking to people, and the amount of respect they had. Like, I grew up, my dad is a great guy, but he is a redneck named Earl. No one called him sir, okay?
That's funny.
So,
That's funny.
seeing just someone call this attorney sir, it was amazing. It was respect that I hadn't seen before. And so as I grew up in these courthouses, because I spent many years running through mainly the Cameron courthouse, seeing these attorneys and seeing what they do and how they help the people, that is what got me interested in going to law school. And mainly that's it. That is the reason I went to law school. And now I'm able to sit there and help the community like they helped. And I get to see firsthand how it makes a big difference in my community. And so I am so glad that my dad dragged me to them courthouses when I was a kid, because it helped make the man I am today. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. All right. And by the way, guys, if you want to remain seated, you can. You don't have to stand, but whatever you're comfortable with is fine. This next question, we'll begin with Ms. Lauren. And again, we're just going to be rotating who goes first. Ms. Lauren, what experience or experiences have you had that make you feel you're the best candidate for district attorney?
I have been practicing law since 2015. When I finished law school, I knew that I didn't want to stay in Baton Rouge. I didn't want to go to New Orleans. So I decided to come back home. And I was very grateful and blessed to have the opportunity to start working at the Marcantel Law Firm. And in 2018, Alex Gwynn and I, my business partner, we opened our own law firm in Jennings, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. It's been great. I practice 5 main areas of law: criminal defense, real estate law, family law, successions and estate planning, and personal injury law. And with the criminal defense, I have my business partner Alex to thank. When we were hustling up contracts, he said, you're gonna go and you're gonna practice some criminal defense, and it's gonna be the Lord's work. You know, you're really in the trenches. And so I learned very quickly by doing that job that there were severe inefficiencies and ineffectiveness in district attorney's office, and a lot of that had to do with political agendas. I also was lucky enough to be in Acadia Parish when I saw a regime change whenever they elected a new district attorney, and I saw what new management did for the efficiency and effectiveness of that office. It wasn't that they didn't have adequate staff and attorneys. They didn't have a leader for the ship. They didn't have somebody who was steering them in the right direction, who was telling them what was expected of them. And so that ignited a fire within me, because anybody that knows me, I like efficiency and effectiveness. I like to know that there's not time being wasted nor money being wasted. And in the district attorney's office, it's your money, it's taxpayer money. And so by doing that, I understood that my management background and my background as an advocate would be detrimental and very useful in the district attorney's office. And so I understood that the agenda had to be to manage that office effectively. That's what I think I can bring to the table. I have a background in ag business with a concentration in management. I love my entrepreneurial mindset. I love balancing budgets. I love running a business, and that's what needs to happen. I also love being an advocate and helping people who need help, and this parish needs help. The victims of our parish need and deserve justice.
Thank you, Ms. Donnelly. Mr. Daniel?
So as I said earlier, I've been an attorney for about 10 years now. About 7 years of that, I've been a public defender. So I've had some insight into the workings of the DA's office and dealing with them and working plea deals. So I have some insight into how it goes. But beyond just how it works, one of the experiences, and I've talked about this before into other groups, and about 12 years ago now, my sister-in-law was murdered, beaten to death by a guy she barely knew. That is not something that's easy to go through. That's not an investigation, a trial, countless meetings that people enjoy doing. But it's something I've been through. And I know what them people are going through, what answers they want, how they want to be involved. That experience is priceless. You just can't learn that from school. You can't learn that by courtroom work. I can bring that to these families. I know how they feel and what they're going through. And one of the most important experiences, I'm part of this community. I've been part of this community for 30 plus years. I'm raising my family in this community. I believe in this community. But I've seen where it's headed. And I know it's time for a change. And this community could be way better if we just make the right changes. And I am ready to do that for y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Elliott, would you like me to repeat the question, or you're fine?
I'm sorry?
Would you like me to repeat the question, or you're fine?
I know it's something about experiences that make you want to be the D. I think I got the gist of it. Thank you. My experience is this. I'm a prosecutor. I'm the only prosecutor on this stage. And that's a huge deal. That's a big, big deal. Because we can't afford to have a district attorney that requires on-the-job training. I've been prosecuting since 2016. I was hired by the Calcasieu Parish District Attorney's Office. I handled the Domestic Violence Division. That's all I did, was domestic violence. All I did, misdemeanors and felonies. Every crime I handled had a victim. Every victim had a voice. And I was handling between 500 and 600 cases at any given time. And we went to trial. We did misdemeanor trials for the misdemeanors, and I even did a felony jury trial in the domestic violence division. To my knowledge, no one has even done one since I left over there. It's because it's such a busy division, a lot of the prosecutors don't have time to do them. And we got a conviction. I was promoted from the domestic violence prosecutor to be a felony division prosecutor. There are numerous felony divisions in Calcasieu Parish. Each one is about the size of our entire docket here in Jeff Davis. And I was the leader of a division. And so I handled everything from simple drug possession to death penalty cases. Again, about 500 to 600 cases at any given time. And did that for the remainder of my time there. So it's not an exaggeration to say I have handled thousands of felony cases, brought them to trial, pled them out, met with victims, met with law enforcement, handled motions, handled arraignments, handled myself in court. And it was based on that experience that Kevin Milliken hired me to be his first assistant. And the first assistant is basically the head prosecutor in the district attorney's office. That's what the first assistant does. If there's a tough case, bring it to me. If you've got a question, let me help you out. And we work as a team. And after Kevin tragically passed in July, kind of like president, vice president, I was sworn in the next morning to be the district attorney. And I swore then, I closed the office for 30 minutes, told the staff by hook or by crook, we are not going to drop the ball, and we haven't. We haven't. Things have run smoothly. Things have run well. The office has not missed a beat, and it's because of the hard work of the staff and my leadership in steering that ship. And I hear calls for change, but I've not seen either of my opponents in the DA's office since I've been there. They've been in Acadia Parish. He's been in, and Daniel has been in city court, but not in the DA's office because things are being run well there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Daniel, you get to start on the first one on this one. This question is, what are your plans to provide for the safety and protection of the citizens of Jeff Davis Parish? Further, do you have any plans to unite the efforts of the parish as well as local law enforcement?
So with the law enforcement, yes, there has been a big issue with law enforcement and DA's office getting along and working together. It's no secret. I've been told this by law enforcement. They have problems. And so, yes, they have to work together. They have to be united. I mean, they don't have to be best friends, but if they ain't on the same page, then the ones who's going to suffer is the community, the people they're sworn to protect. So, yes, we need to sit down and reunite the DA's office and sheriff's office, local police, get everybody on the same page. And not just in the beginning, have one meeting and then say, hey, we're all fine. But no, it is a constant relationship. You got to go and keep going and going back and say, hey, what do we need to do to make this better? It's got to be constant. Now, what I would like to change to help protect the community better, we'll start moving the docket and having a few more trials, or changing the way we do plea deals. Because I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but the current system is like buying a used car. They start high, we come low, 7 months later, we're going to meet in the middle. What does that do? That doesn't do anything but waste time, waste money. We need to stop that. And when I first became a public defender in district court, I didn't know that. It was the criminals who actually told me how it worked. They actually taught me, and they were right. If we take it right before trial, they're going to shave a few extra years off the plea deal, guaranteed. And it worked. But who does that serve? It ain't the community. I mean, as a public defender, that was great. But that doesn't serve the community. We need to give an offer, stay firm. They don't like it, take it to trial. So we have a few more trials. Well, guess what? That's the DA's office's job to have the trials if they don't plea it out. That's what we need to do. And we do it enough, the community is going to have faith in us again, and the criminals are going to know to take the offer we give them first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Elliot,
This one I do need you to repeat.
what are your plans to provide for the safety and protection of the citizens of Jeff Davis Parish? Further, do you have any plans to unite the efforts of parish and local law enforcement?
Okay, so community safety first. So community safety, the way we keep the community safe is with law enforcement. And so the question kind of does work together. And one of the things I did right off the bat, is I got sworn in on a Thursday morning. By that next Monday, I was calling law enforcement, and I met with the sheriff, and I met with every single chief of police, and I asked them, how can the DA's office better serve you and better serve your office? And I got a variety of answers, but pretty much to a man, it was a couple of things that were the same and were very consistent. And so what are we doing? Number one, we're shutting down the drug trade. Number two, we're dropping the hammer on violent criminals and sex offenders. And number 3, we are tackling the juvenile problem. Now, because we were submitted the question, so I know one's about juvenile justice, spoiler alert. So I won't go into that for this question. But how do we tackle the drug trade? I have brought in multiple agencies that were not here in Jeff Davis Parish before. And I did it with the help of Kevin Milliken. So the state police, we got them in to the DA's office. We said, guys, we need y'all working drug cases here. In Calcasieu Parish and in Lafayette Parish, they have the time, money, people, and resources to go after the heavy hitters, to go after the drug dealers. We lack those things in rural, small Jeff Davis Parish. So state police comes in and says, well, look, we didn't like the way you were prosecuting these cases in the past. We want you to do it this way. Kevin had a meeting with me and says, Elliot, what do you think? I said, Kevin, that's the way I would have done it had they never asked. Rock on. So they're here now. The state police are here, and that hasn't cost us an extra dime. The CAT team, the Combined Anti-Drug Task Force out of Calcasieu Parish, is here because of connections that I had from Calcasieu, because they know a safer Jeff Davis means a safer Calcasieu. A lot of the dealers moved over here, but they're still dealing on the streets of Lake Charles, so they're helping us out. That's another agency that's here that's not costing us a dime. Number 3, we got the feds involved. I met with 2 assistant U.S. attorneys who came in and said 2 things. Number 1, yeah, if you've got some heavy hitters, we'll prosecute them, and they are. They just took one to trial and won and got a guilty verdict from a guy right here in Jeff Davis Parish. That's the DA's office is never going to get any credit for that. But Abraham Lincoln said it's amazing what you can get accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit. I don't. And so we got a bad person off the street. Someone who was poisoning our community is now off the streets. So that's a third entity that's here. That is not costing us a dime, that is working to tackle the drug trade. As far as violent and sex offenders go, what we're going to do, we take them to trial. We give them an offer. If they don't take it, we take them to trial. We don't negotiate on trial day. We drop the hammer on them by using the habitual offender bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lauren?
Yes, I see we have some law enforcement in the back, and I'm sure we have some dispersed throughout. There is a problem that we are facing in our parish, and that problem is that there is a lack of trust. There is a lack of faith. That lack of trust is what has led to this lack of communication. And so we have law enforcement who have been trying to do their job for the past decade, and they're doing their jobs 110%, and then that gets to the district attorney's office, and then the ball was being dropped. That's not a secret. You can talk to your law enforcement. That's what I did. There's a lack of trust because it's the blame game. Whose fault is it that we couldn't prosecute? Whose fault is it that we didn't have this? You have to open those lines of communication with your law enforcement officers because they're the first line of defense. They're the ones building your case. They're the ones that are going to be presenting that. And guess what? We haven't been having trials. So guess how much trial experience they have? None. They haven't been questioned on the stand. So the district attorney's office is there to assist. You have to have an open door and an open rapport with those officers and make sure that they know that we have your back. And I'm here to say, when I'm elected, I will have law enforcement's back. You bring those cases. If anything's wrong with them, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to make sure that law enforcement has all of the tools that they need in order to get those dangerous criminals off of the street. That's what has to happen. And so it's nice to say, in theory, we're going to prosecute. Yes, we are going to prosecute. But you can't prosecute without law enforcement. You can't. And so from the top down, we have to have absolute faith in our law enforcement officers and all of our agencies, from the state police to the sheriff's department to the municipal police departments. Every one of those is important. Every one of those is important. And so how do we bring all of those together? We start those conversations. And it's more than just one conversation. It's multiple conversations. What do you need? Let's communicate. Let's talk about this. What do you need from the district attorney's office? That's what we've been lacking. And that's what we will bring to the district attorney's office. Communication, trust. It's time to repair that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're on question number 4. Mr. Elliot, you get to go first this time. The question is, what are your plans to assist with juvenile violence, programs, or methods?
So the juvenile program I alluded to, the juvenile problem I alluded to earlier is very real here in Jeff Davis. And it started, I want to talk about the problem, and then let's talk about the solution. So what's the problem? The problem stems from about 4 or 5 years ago, we passed justice reinvestment here in Louisiana. And as an assistant DA in Calcasieu Parish, I was one of many prosecutors across the state who stomped our feet and waved our hands and said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and it passed. And one of the things that justice reinvestment did was completely revamp and reform the way juvenile prosecution is done. And so now you cannot prosecute anyone as an adult unless they are 18 or basically unless they commit a rape or a murder. And so we've got 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are committing adult-like crimes, violent crimes, who we can't prosecute as an adult. I had to tell someone the other day. I said, well, if the juvenile shoots at you, no, I have to prosecute them as a juvenile. If they hit you, I can prosecute you as an adult. That's how crazy Baton Rouge has gotten this law. And so basically what we have to do is prosecute juveniles very fast with one hand tied behind our back. So what's the answer? The answer is in the communities. We have started gathering people for a community organization, the Children and Youth Services Program. And it's a community-driven board that we are going to have people from across Jeff Davis Parish. It's an old board that used to exist that was defunct. We're resurrecting it because we've got to give these kids something to do. I always talk to people about a 16-year-old. Imagine a 16-year-old with 2 cousins, both 26. One of them is a mechanic. He works hard. He comes home tired. He's dirty. He's wearing old clothes. They're tattered. There's holes in his shoes. He drives an old beat-up truck. The other cousin's a drug dealer. He's 26, but he's got the nicest clothes money can buy. He's got jewelry on. He's got the brand new Jordans. He drives a shiny car. The 16-year-old sees those two. Who does he want to be? The 16-year-old can't see 30 years down the road. The mechanic's going to be happy, retired, a grandparent with his family. The drug dealer's going to be dead or in prison. But we got to get the 16-year-olds to see that, and we got to reach them before they're teenagers. And so that's what this community panel is going to do. The other side of it is they have adults who are driving juveniles into this life. And we are going to find out who they are, and we're going to make sure that they spend a good amount of time in prison for it. Thank you.
Miss Lauren?
I learned very early on that not everybody was blessed with parents who pushed and drove me to success. I learned very early on, whenever I lost friends, whenever I was in school, junior high, high school. It's not okay. It's not okay. And so, yes, we have young people in this parish who are committing violent crimes. They're committing violent crimes, and if they are 18 and they're committing violent crimes, they are going to be tried as an adult. Because for too long, we haven't had consequences. And so, As a district attorney, I understand that that's going to be important. Consequences will be important. But as a community member and as someone who's an advocate for children, I understand that it is about catching them at that vital age and making sure you're tapping into that leadership potential. Schools are the best place to start. In elementary, we have the DARE program. Well, what about in junior high and high school? That's when I lost my friends. That's when my friends went missing. I know where they went. I know where they went. And listen, the older criminals, the drug traffickers, they understand that those young folks can't be prosecuted. They're not stupid. They know that. And so what do you need? You need consistency. You need consistency and you need community involvement. It takes all of us. It takes the churches, the schools, the community outreach programs. It takes all of us to understand that no child is hopeless. And so if we can tap into the potential of the young folks and have mentorship programs, I've already been looking into federal and state grants in order to get funding for community outreach programs in the schools, in the churches, in the community. Because that's where we're going to make a difference. That's where we're going to make a difference. And so we absolutely have to be consistent because our young folks are not having consistency. I know everybody's seen that. I was raised by the village. That's not how it is anymore. We have to be the village as the community. It starts with each one of us. Thank you.
Very good.
So my first step to help with the juveniles is clean the streets up, get rid of the crime. These kids get off school, go home, what do they see? Crime in the streets, people doing drugs, drug deals. They're around it all the time when they're home. I don't care how much talking you do to them, but if that's what they're going to be exposed to on a daily basis, that's what they're going to do because that's what they see. They're around that more than they are their teachers. We need to clean that up. Then we can work on the children. People who get caught, juveniles who get caught, get some counseling. Find out what's causing this, why they're doing that. We can't just throw them in the system and ruin their lives, because then guess what? They're going to go back to doing the crimes. We got to help them. Find out why they're doing this. Bring the programs to them. Because in a lot of these areas, these kids don't have rides. So if you got this great program, but it's across town, these kids ain't going to it. They have no way to get there. We need to find a way to bring programs to those areas. Sports programs, something to occupy them. So they have something to do. So they're just not sitting there watching their neighbor go make a few $1,000s selling drugs and then go home. Get them away from that. We got to help the children and clean up the streets. Then they will be better. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to set up the next question by giving a definition so the audience knows what this question pertains to. In Louisiana, according to Louisiana Revised Statute, a person charged with a felony offense who has been convicted of prior felony offenses may be charged by multiple offender bill as a habitual offender. If the court finds that the person has been convicted of one or more prior felonies within a certain time period, his sentence will be increased. So, Lauren, you get to go first with this one. What is your stance on the habitual multiple offenders bill?
My stance is that it's underutilized in our parish. So, if we don't have criminals facing any consequences, if we are not prosecuting, then they're going to just set up shop in our backyard. And that's exactly what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing with drugs. That's what we're seeing with youth violence. It's right here in our backyard. I met with law enforcement and specifically asked what is not being done that absolutely has to be done immediately. And the first response was that people needed to be habitualized. You can read it in the paper. How many times do our law enforcement have to arrest the same individual before they are prosecuted? How many times are they being prosecuted? These are all questions that we need to be asking. And I am asking them. It's not happening. So when we talk about drugs, and we talk about habitualization, or we talk about distribution charges and habitualization, we have an opportunity to give even more teeth to that sentencing, because you can multiply that sentencing. And let me just tell you, I represented indigent defenders. Like I said, it was the Lord's work in the trenches, and the jails talk. People talk. Those offenders talk. They know that jail time is being given. They don't want jail time. Daniel said it's like a used car salesman negotiations. That is how it is. And I was very surprised to figure that out. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. The inefficiencies of that system are ridiculous. So I'm trying to prepare to go to court, and I don't even have a plea deal. I don't have discovery. I don't have any of that. Those inefficiencies have got to go. And so if there's somebody who has been charged and convicted of a felony, habitualization is absolutely on the table, especially if law enforcement has put their lives on the line to pick that individual up over and over and over again.
Thank you, Lauren. Mr. Daniel?
Just like Ms. Heinen said, I went and spoke out with law enforcement too, and that was a problem. That is not being used nearly enough. In fact, when I was a public defender, I know it's been a few years since I practiced in the district courts, but when I was there, I can recall the DA's office bringing it up once, that they may habitualize one of my clients if he doesn't plea. Once out of hundreds of felony cases. I even had a client who was on his fourth offense for distribution of crack cocaine. DA's office never once brought that up. So it is absolutely being underutilized. And it's why? When it's so simple to bring. And once again, law enforcement are arresting these people constantly. I mean, the fact that when I first became a public defender, one of the criminals looked at me and said, "Oh, you're the new guy." When the criminal's telling the attorney he's the new guy, there's something wrong. These people are coming back way too often. And this happens in this parish. I'm not making this up. And so, yes, it needs to be used more often. And those people need to know we're going to use it. Because when they realize they're going away for more time, they're going to straighten up. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Elliot?
I've got some great news for my colleagues who do not practice criminal law in district court here in Jeff Davis Parish. We're using it. So I'm sure they'll be very happy to know that. We use the habitual offender bill in every plea offer that we make, because I tell the defense attorney, here's what your client's been convicted of. Here's what I'm going to offer him. If he doesn't take it, we're going to habitualize him. Every person who can be habitualized, if they go to trial, will be habitualized in Jeff Davis Parish. And it's not simple. That is pure inexperience speaking. It is an extremely complicated process. It involves getting witnesses, usually from other jurisdictions, other states even, to come in, because you have to identify that that's the person that committed that crime every single time. You can't just put a rap sheet on the table and say, no, that's him. You got to prove it was him, reprove it was him every single time there was a conviction. Now, this doesn't work for misdemeanors. They're multiple felony convictions. And so what we always did in Calcasieu Parish, you get the rap sheet. And what I have done in Jeff Davis Parish is I get the rap sheet. When I submit a plea offer to the defense attorney, I list 1, 2, 3, whatever, however many felony convictions there are. And so they know what their client is facing. Now, the other side, for violent offenders, for sex offenders, for drug distributors, for people who are poisoning our community, yes, those people are going to get habitualized, and it's used as part of the plea offer. I've told the story before that when I first got to the DA's office, the oldest case in the office was a homicide. I got here in 2021. The oldest case in the office was a homicide from 2016. And the lead detective told me, Elliot, it's complicated. We can't figure this one out. Just get 10 years out of the guy and be done with it. We were going to take him to trial. I said I don't negotiate on trial days, but they can plea as charged. I can't stop them from doing that. Because he was eligible for the habitual offender bill, he pled and got 25 years. We made something out of nothing because of the habitual offender bill. The most recent trial we had, the guy was not eligible to be habitualized. He had no prior felony convictions, but he still got life in prison. And so the way it works is it increases your sentencing range. You go for example, if someone's facing 0 to 10, if they're a double bill, they might face 5 to 15. If they're a triple bill, they might face 10 to 20. If they're a quad bill, which is the highest it goes, they might face 20 to life. If there's more than one violent crime, it might be mandatory life. And so when defense attorneys see that on their plea offer and they see that we have started the paperwork for filing multi-bills, they know we're serious, and they're right.
We're on question number 6. We're moving right along, and I think all 3 of you are doing great. Daniel, you get to go first on this one. With all of the talk over the last couple of years about defund the police and all that it entailed, please tell us your feelings about law enforcement and the prosecution of police when they are required to use their weapon.
Well, plain and simple, without law enforcement, we wouldn't be able to do our job. I mean, we need them. It is the law enforcement who go put their life on the line to go make that arrest. So without them, we don't need a DA's office. So they're crucial. There's no way around it. We got to have them. And as far as discharging their firearm, they did so. That was proper. Hey, it's what it is. Now, if you got some guy who wants to show off, pull out his revolver and accidentally shoot somebody, well then, hey, we got to prosecute. You being stupid with a firearm, you're gonna get prosecuted. But if you're doing your job, and look, I don't want to do what they do. When you're in that moment and it's dark, you can't see what the guy's got in his hand. I don't want to be the one to make that decision because, I mean, we've all seen the news. So I respect what they do. And I am glad that they're out there doing it. So if they do what they need to do and they discharge their firearm, I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daniel. Mr. Elliott, thank you.
When you submitted the questions, this is one I looked at over and over, and I keyed in on one word that you used, and it was required. They are required to use their weapon. And so the answer to the ultimate question is, will we prosecute law enforcement when they are required to use their weapon? No, never. That will never happen. Law enforcement has our back. We need to have their back. And so as long as I'm the DA, we're always going to back the blue. And if they feel like they have to defend themselves, I want them going home to their kids. And if they feel like they have to protect the community, I want them going home back to their community. And I want our community to feel safe. God knows they don't get paid enough. God knows they make way too little to do way too much. So when we have an opportunity to get their back, we're going to get it. The second part of the question that I looked at was, I started thinking, okay, well, so what happens when an officer discharges his firearm? It's a special procedure. And for an officer-involved shooting, state police always comes in. State police always investigates officer-involved shootings. And it's a very, 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 very large report. It is thorough, it is lengthy, and it's usually a very good job. It's some of the best investigators in state police do this. And it's not to go after the officer. It's to go after the person, usually, who was shot. Now, if they are not required to use their weapon, that's a whole different can of wax. And so we look at that differently. And we have prosecuted members of law enforcement who dishonored the badge. And I communicated with law enforcement while doing it because I wanted to make sure I got every side of that story before we made that decision. And a lot of times we bring those to grand jury to make sure the community is involved in that decision. Because defunding the police is nonsense. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I thought it was a joke the first time I heard it. And, I mean, without them, we are not safe. And so we have got to protect our brothers in blue. And in the DA's office, we are in a unique position where we actually can, more than just talk the talk, we can walk the walk. And that's what we're going to do every time. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Lauren?
Law enforcement is absolutely essential to the safety and protection of our community. The national outcry to defund the police is the worst possible thing that we could do. The worst possible thing. Talk to any city policeman in this area and ask them what they think they're lacking. It's training. It's training. We need to be funding the police. We need to be funding them and making sure that they have that adequate training. And for too long, there has not been a fair distribution of monies coming from traffic tickets, coming from the LACE program, to fund those sorts of things for our law enforcement officers. They deserve that training. If they're going to put their life on the line, they deserve that training. I'm a gun owner myself. I'm not carrying right now. Nobody freak out. But I am a firm believer that if you carry a firearm, which all of our law enforcement do, you have to have hands-on situational training in order to put yourself into that psychological space where your central nervous system is going from sympathetic to parasympathetic. That's a lot of technology, but a lot of science there. But they have to have that sort of training so that they can walk into a situation confident and not trigger happy. You hear that all the time, trigger happy. It's not about being trigger happy. It's about making sure that they are protected and safe. They are the ones going into these dangerous situations. And so having them inadequately trained is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. There are plenty private organizations across the state and nation who offer this type of training. And I would like to see our policemen go through those trainings. That hands-on, situational, scenario-based training so that they can feel that they are supported, that they can feel that they have that confidence and just that ability to recognize the situation, recognize where they're at, and be able to escalate or de-escalate as they should be required to do. And so in terms of prosecuting police, I believe that's a case-by-case basis, and I am a huge advocate for body cams. Body cam use is wonderful. As an attorney, I'm always asking for body cam. that's going to give our officers also a way to cover themselves. And if something is done wrong, then, like I said, case-by-case basis. If prosecution is what's called for, then prosecution is what's going to happen. But law enforcement deserves that training. They deserve that funding because they are the ones who are putting their lives on the line so that we don't have to.
All right, we're on question number 7. And Mr. Elliot, you get to go first for this one. What is your view of the Constitution as it pertains to the local citizenry of Jefferson Davis Parish? In particular, what is your stance on a citizen's First and Second Amendment rights, our freedoms of speech, to assemble, and our right to bear arms?
Okay, in 3 minutes. I am what we would call a constitutional conservative. That means that it's a pretty simple philosophy. What's written in the Constitution is what matters. That's what matters. We don't need to look elsewhere. What's written in the Constitution, the words that they use, people mean what they say and they say what they mean. So we look to the actual words that our founding fathers used and to the words that all of the amendments actually use. And as it affects, I think you asked about the First and Second Amendment. So the First Amendment is our 5 basic freedoms: freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom to petition. So the most important one is the freedom of religion. There's everything else is like run in at the end, but the freedom of religion is like 3 lines in the First Amendment. I think they were handing out constitutions tonight. You can check me on that. Freedom of religion is what brings us to church on Sundays. It means you can come worship here on Sunday if you want. You can go somewhere else if you want. I'm not trying to take away anybody. That's the point I'm trying to make. You can go worship wherever you want. That's one of this founding principles of this country. That's why people came here. That's why we fought a Revolutionary War, and that's why it's the first thing mentioned in the First Amendment. The next thing mentioned is the freedom of speech. That's the second most important freedom in the First Amendment. And the freedom of speech is also extremely important. It means that we can feel free from being punished by the government to say what we want. Of course, it's not unlimited. I can't threaten you. Someone can't run into this room right here, into this crowded room, and yell, "Fire, fire, fire," and have everybody trample over each other. So there are limits on that freedom. But the general principle, and it is applied very strictly, is that you cannot, the government cannot punish you for anything you say. It doesn't mean freedom of consequences. Other people can punish you, but the government can't. And so after that is the freedom of the press, the freedom of the petition, freedom to assemble. All 3 of those are checks on government, right? It makes sure that the citizens have a right to check their government, either through the media, through petitions, or through protest. Of course, again, it's limited. You can't protest and go burn down a building. We're going to prosecute you for that. But you do have a right to protest. As the Second Amendment goes, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is the boundary, is the border wall between freedom and tyranny. An unarmed society is not a free society. Never forget that. And I am pro-gun, I am pro-Second Amendment. And the other one that didn't mention, but I think deserves to be brought up, is because there's a case currently in front of the Supreme Court. I am pro-life. The Supreme Court got it wrong 50 years ago in Roe v. Wade. They got a chance to get it right this term, and let's pray they do.
Thank you. Ms. Lauren?
As an attorney, the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So it's sacred to an attorney. Because I believe that our founding fathers were not resting upon their own convictions. They were definitely resting upon the convictions from something much higher. And so what does that mean to me? The U.S. Constitution, what does that mean to me? I'm a woman. Let's get it out there. I'm female. I'm the first female running for district attorney. And so what that means to me is women have only had the right to vote for 101 years. Let that sink in. There are women alive today who were alive during a time when they did not have the right to vote. That's significant. History is not so long ago. We are a very young country. And so our Constitution has to be fought for. Has to be fought for, has to be respected. And that First Amendment right, that's our right to disagree with one another. That's our right to disagree with our government. That's our right to speak out whenever we don't agree with what our government is doing, without fear of retribution. The Winter Olympics are happening right now. Go Team USA. And I can't help but be so proud and grateful and thankful that I was born in this country. Because here we are free. We are free because of that document. There are men and women who have fought and died to defend our freedoms, the freedoms that are outlined in that Constitution. And so as far as the First Amendment goes, it is the number one for a reason. Because without it, you wouldn't have a number two. You wouldn't have a number two. So I just told you before, I am a gun carrier, a gun owner, and I have some really avid sportsmen in my family who enjoy hunting and carrying, personal carrying. And I had one uncle tell me, the government's gonna come for my guns. They're coming. And I had to tell him, no, they are not. Because as long as that document stands, as long as we have that Constitution, we have the right to bear arms, and we will.
Mr. Daniel?
Well, I don't think I can say it any better. Ms. Heinen, good job. I mean, I know I said this at the last forum, but ditto. Yeah, I thought a lot about this question, and because it is very important to everybody, not just lawyers, but I mean the freedom of religion. That's why we have this church. Freedom of speech. That's why we're up here doing this, because of those freedoms. And so, thinking about it's just important to everybody that when the founding fathers put that together, that's what they thought of. And we need to fight to keep those where they are. It is a document that helps protect us from an overreaching, greedy government. And as long as that document stands, the United States will stand. And as far as the right to bear arms, I have a gun cabinet full of them. And I just actually bought one about a month ago, but because of this campaign, I ain't been able to use it. So I'm looking forward to the weekend after the election. So yes, I stand behind the Constitution. I stand for the Constitution. Thank you.
I want to just pause for a moment and thank all three of you for obviously you're in a competition, a race, and I believe that you are conducting yourselves with great civility and restraint, and I appreciate that very much. Yes. So this is the last question, and this one is very personal to me. With all that's happened with the COVID and the government's response to this virus. Ms. Lauren, you get to go first for this last question. And because we're so far ahead on the schedule, we'll allow probably 5 minutes or so for your closing remarks at the end of this last question. So, Ms. Lauren, you go first. Do you believe that a governor's mandate carries the same weight as law?
So a government mandate does carry the same weight as legislative law under a state of emergency. However, if that mandate or law is in violation of our U.S. Constitution, it can and will be challenged. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. We are seeing the system of checks and balances in real time. It is an amazing, terrifying, educational time in our nation's history because our values are being questioned. Our ideals are being questioned. And now it is more important than ever, to speak up and speak out when you disagree with decisions that are made from a place of power. Well, I think I'll just stop there then.
Mr. Daniel?
So do I believe a mandate carries the same weight as a law? No. A law can take years to be enacted, go through several committees, revise, thrown back, revise to fit what it's meant to do. Mandates ain't like that. Governor decides, well, we're in an emergency, let me create something. A few days, he's got something in place. I don't think it works as well as a law. This mask mandate has made a lot of people question that and made people question, well, the Constitution, the right to assemble. You know, there was a time when they didn't want us getting together. So does the mandate have more power than the Constitution? I don't believe so. We create laws when we take the time to figure out what's right for the community. Now, I understand there's emergencies and we need to act quickly on certain things. And I didn't say that the mandates aren't legal or shouldn't be enforced. I was asked my belief. My belief is that those mandates put a restriction on our rights, and they should not. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Elliot?
Isn't being a lawyer great sometimes? One said yes and one said no, and they're both right. A mandate is not the same as a law. It does not have the equal effect as a law. But during a time of emergency, the legislature passed a law that says the governor can declare a state of emergency, and in doing so, his mandate can have the effect of law. And the legislator, there is a check in there. The legislature can end it, but it's really unfair. They have to do it over and over and over again. And so the issue becomes not necessarily is a mandate the same as a law. The issue becomes, is there an overreach of power in Baton Rouge by using mandates that have the effect of law? And the answer to that question is unequivocally yes. I saw a lot of faces tonight that I saw back at Welsh Roanoke, or Welsh Elementary, back in August, my first school board meeting. It was a packed crowd with a lot of faces that are in this room. And Pastor, you were there, your wife was there, your family was there. And I saw people fighting for their constitutional rights. And everyone who was there should be very proud of themselves. And I had to sit on that stage silent. And I'm sure I was getting some dirty looks. I don't doubt it for a second. because I'm the legal advisor to the school board. And so I can't discuss what I legally advise the school board to do, but I can discuss this issue, and I'm happy to. I was not asked, Elliot, how do we keep those kids in masks? That wasn't the question. It was, what do we do? Do we have to do this? So I called a lot of DAs across the state who talked to their school boards. We called John Geis, who was there that night. We called an education law expert. I did my own research. And we had to go back to the school board and say, the governor calls checkmate. He beat us. Like I said earlier, we are having a baby tomorrow morning, and because of COVID protocols, my 2-year-old daughter can't come and can't hold her little sister. And I had to watch my wife tear up this morning when she found that out. So, no, a mandate is not the same as a law. And it's being misused to have the effect of law. And I wish that the school board could have done something. I really do. I genuinely do. I think that the people who were there that night had more friends on the school board than they realized, but legally, I could not advise them to buck him. And not one parish did. Not one across the state of Louisiana. So, all I can tell you is the way to make that change is to make that change in leadership in Baton Rouge. Thank you.
Well, thank you, all three of you. I think you've all done an outstanding job. And now we are going to give you time for closing remarks. It's only 7:15. We allotted 2 hours. And I think it would be fair. If you chose to go 5 minutes, you're welcome to. You're certainly not obligated to. And we're just going to continue in the order. And the first person up for closing remarks would be Mr. Daniel Sparks.
So when I started this campaign, I figured I'm going to walk the streets. I'm going to go to the different communities and find out what they believe is wrong with the current system, what changes they would like to see. Because at the end of the day, the DA's office ain't about one person. It's about the community. So I've walked Topsy, Roanoke, Fenton, Lagacine, Elton, Lake Arthur, Jennings. I've talked to hundreds of people. And what I found out was disturbing. I found not one person had a positive thing to say about the DA's office. Not one. They had plenty of complaints. Even people who were victims of crimes, who went through it, complained about how their case was handled. I had one guy in my office a couple of weeks ago who went to the DA's office to talk about his case. He told me he sat in the lobby all day. Not one person came to talk to him. He left. Talked to another guy. His store was broken into. Stuff was stolen. The guy was caught. Had felony charges. Sitting in jail. Well, if you catch a misdemeanor charge, if you're in jail for 3 months and you're done and you get out. Well, that 3-month mark hit, and without the DA's office calling the victim, they changed it to a misdemeanor and he got out. I talked to that victim. He was upset. He said he was ready to go to trial. He was ready to tell the judge what happened. But no one called him. No one explained to him what was going on and gave him the option to say yes or no to this plea. And this occurred last year. This ain't something old. This is happening now. This needs to change. When you go out there and the community has no respect for the DA's office, that's a big problem. That's a big problem for me. That should be a big problem for everybody. That should let you know what's going on. And that needs to change. We need to involve the victims more. We need to involve the community, let them know what's going on. Because one of the biggest complaints I received is they just felt everything was pled out. No one faced the judge or the jury. It was just pled out. And a lot is. And a lot is without telling the victims. That's not right. To find out later that the case you're involved with is done and they never told you, we need to change this. And I guarantee you, when I'm elected, I will change that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Elliot?
I've said many times, but it bears repeating, that I am the only prosecutor on this stage. I'm the only one who's done it, who's actually been into court and put a criminal away. Put a criminal behind bars, put someone in jail. I've done it. Everything from traffic tickets to handling death penalty cases. I've done it. And I believe in what is called victim-centric prosecution. And what that means is before we put out a plea offer, we call the victim. Before we make any kind of offer on the case, we talk to the victim. For crimes of violence and for sex crimes, we get the victim in basically as soon as we get the report, as soon as we have a chance to read the report. We want them informed and involved every step of the way. It's extremely important, extremely important. And if what Daniel says is true, and if we drop the ball, then shame on us. I suspect something else happened, but shame on us if that's true. Because that's not the way I run the office. The hardest part of this job, and I said it last week, is to tell a victim, especially a victim of a sex crime, that we can't prosecute your case. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you didn't call the police, not because you didn't recognize the person, not because you did anything at all wrong, but because we do have a constitution in this country. Criminal defendants do have more constitutional rights than victims. It's unfortunate but true. And sometimes we can't prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, and I have to look a victim of sexual assault in the eye and tell them, we're not going forward. We can't. Because I don't want to sell you false hope. I don't want to give you false hope 2 years down the road that we just don't have it in this case. That's a hard thing to do, but you have to do it. Because false hope is a dangerous thing. The best part about this job is twofold. It's when you get to call a victim like I got, or get to talk to them in person like I did on Monday. Yesterday, I got to talk to a little girl after her abuser, her sexual abuser, received a sentence of life in prison. And I got to tell her, he's never going to hurt you. And to get there, you cannot start at the top. You have to work your way up. I worked my way through traffic tickets, through misdemeanors, through jury trials, through felonies, through motions. I worked my way up as a first assistant prosecutor. I had the entire office fall on my lap after Kevin Milliken suddenly passed. I had to work through leadership. I had to work through all of it because you cannot start at the top. Pastor, you know you've forgotten more about the Bible than I will ever know, but I do know that towards the end of the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus mentioned, you cannot build your kingdom on a foundation of sand. You have to build your kingdom on a foundation of stone. And that's my background. That's the prosecutorial background. That's the cornerstone of the office. Because we have a wonderful team. I said it in the newspaper, I'll say it again, we've got the best team in the business. We've got a ton of experience. Kevin assembled just a top-notch staff. I retained every single one of them, made one hire, an assistant DA, Tori Thibodeau, to replace me. But without the foundation that sits in the DA's office, without the district attorney himself having the knowledge on how the courtroom works, on how to handle victims, on how to prosecute cases, on when to pull an offer, on when to give an offer, on when to contact people, on how to prosecute cases against good defense attorneys, because there's some good ones out there. Without that, it all topples over. I don't say this to scare anyone, but it's the real deal. The person I talked to you earlier is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. He will be moving to Angola next week. But without experience in the prosecutor's office, he would be moving next door to you and your children. That's real. That's not to scare anyone. That's what happens when the prosecutor doesn't know what he or she is doing. So I would appreciate your vote on Election Day, and thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you. Miss Lauren, you get the last word, dear.
I want to show of hands in here. Who likes college football? Shameless plug, go Tigers. They took all my money, so I'm going to root for them, make that degree look pretty on the wall. Whenever a head coach is hired for a job, that head coach is not expected to be the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, the quarterback, the running back, the tight end, the kicker. No. That head coach is in place because he's supposed to put, or he or she, don't want to leave the women out of it, are supposed to put a team of expert and skilled people together who all are there for a common goal, a common objective. If you have your head coach doing all of those jobs, there's no management. There's no management. That's what we're lacking in the district attorney's office right now. We need prosecutors prosecuting, and we need a district attorney that isn't afraid to work and knows how to manage people, knows how to manage cases, knows how to manage a budget, knows how to manage a staff. Because without that head coach, nobody knows what the goal is. Without that person bringing the team together and making sure that they know the expectations of that office and what needs to change, the ship sinks. And for too long, the ship has been sinking. I've owned, operated, managed, and grown a successful practice here in town. I'm very proud of that. I've told you about my background in ag business with a concentration in management. I also told you that I'm an advocate. I'm an attorney. And whether my opponent likes it or not, I have been in the criminal law world on the defense side of things, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I didn't have the right last name to be in the district attorney's office. So I did the next best thing because I wanted that criminal experience. I knew that that system was flawed, and it's flawed for a reason. Take the politics out of it and get the job done. That's what we're here to do. I'm not a politician. I've been called a politician because I'm running for office. I will accept that. But know this, I am a servant leader. I come from a family of servant leaders who have given me that foundation, that foundation to serve others because I have that ability. I have a voice. I have a voice that lives to fight for those who do not have a voice. Those victims that come into that office deserve to be treated as human beings and understand that victim advocacy, we are ready for that. We are ready for that. We are ready to treat people the way that they need to be treated, and understand that it's time for justice. Understand that it's time for justice in this community and justice for everyone. There's going to be an open door policy. That is guaranteed. And so for the last minute, I'd just like to thank everybody for being here. Thank you all for sitting here and listening to all of us talk about what our plans are, what we want to do, and how excited we are to have this opportunity. This is democracy at work. This is democracy at work. And so I know all of us here are very excited to give you the opportunity to make a choice and know that this choice is important. This election is important. District Attorney, the Office of District Attorney, there are no term limits. Know that. Know that this is an important election because it's going to shape the future of our parish. And so who do you want? This is your choice. Who do you want representing your rights? Who do you want fighting for you? Who do you want steering that ship? Thank you to my family. Thank you to everybody who has donated to the campaign. It has been a grassroots effort, and I am just so proud of our parish because they have come together. They have come together to identify an issue, and we are out to change. We are out to change this office. We are out to change leadership, and I just thank you all, and I hope that you all vote in March. Thank you.
So, Mr. Elliot, if you win, we all win. Miss Lauren, if you win, we all win. And Mr. Daniel, if you win, we all win. Because as you said earlier, the democratic process is in place. When it's all said and done, we're citizens of this great parish, and we're going to work together. Thank you for your candidness. Thank you for your time tonight. Before we dismiss, I'd like to just speak a blessing over them and pray. Remain standing one moment. So, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, I thank you for these three individuals. Your word teaches us that the powers that be are ordained of God. Now, that helps us to understand when there are tyrannical, dictatorial leaders who are wicked and evil. Somehow, we have to pull all of that into our worldview of Christianity, trusting that you are on top of everything. But in the microcosm of this small parish, we ask that your perfect will be done. We speak blessings over all three of these candidates. I ask for protection, we ask for wisdom, and for your perfect will to be done. We bless them in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. And everyone said amen. Again, thank you for your time tonight. You're welcome to hang around in fellowship. God bless you. You're dismissed in Jesus' name. Thank you so much.